در ایجاد محدودیت.
If he wants to take certain actions, our response will be an equivalent, earthquake-like retaliation.
Iran's new top security chief, Rezaei, is issuing a fresh warning to the US and countries backing Washington's economic pressure campaign against Tehran. Rezaei said Iran would first try to negotiate with countries considering new economic restrictions. But he also delivered a blunt threat, warning that if those countries refuse to back down, Tehran will hit the interests of that country. The warning comes just days after US President Donald Trump announced what he called an economic D-Day against Iran, signaling tougher pressure on Tehran.
We tell all neighboring countries and other countries around the world not to enter into an economic war alongside the United States. Any country that partners in creating economic restrictions against us will be considered an enemy. Of course, first, we will negotiate with them. We will hold a meeting and say, step aside, separate yourselves from the United States, but if they do not comply, we will hit the interests of that country.
Rezaei also threatened American commercial interests if Washington follows through with further economic measures, saying Iran had previously focused its attacks on US military bases.
We have so far not attacked any American economic interests. We have hit American bases. It is true that we hit American bases, but why? Because we were attacked from those bases. Now, if they are going to impose economic sanctions on us, the US has many oil companies and economic interests around Iran and in other places. Well, we will hit those.
Rezaei argued that the US and Israeli strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities have shaken confidence in the global nuclear non-proliferation system. He said other countries could now question whether being part of the NPT and allowing international inspections really protects them from military attacks.
Trump's foolishness has increased the appeal and desire of the people of the world for the atomic bomb, meaning, America said it came to prevent the atomic bomb, and now the whole world is saying, wow, so neither the NPT nor membership in the Atomic Energy Agency is effective. It has become clear that the atomic issue is so important that America would start such a war, so why shouldn't we, the peoples of the world, pursue the atomic bomb? In the first place, they came to make nuclear security, but now nuclear insecurity has been created.
The Hormuz dispute remains central to efforts to revive the Islamabad Memorandum of Understanding between Iran and the United States, signed in June. Rezaei separately said Iran and Oman had agreed on a transit route through the strait, although negotiations were not complete. He also warned Washington against increasing its military presence, or making what he described as hostile moves around the strait.
We have agreed with Oman already on the transit path, but the joint statement is not yet ready. However, we have agreed on the path. I advise the Americans not to deploy any additional forces. If they add forces, we will strike that very base. If they make any movement along the southern route, we will hit them. Any meeting they hold, if we discover it, if they are meeting with counter-revolutionary groups somewhere, we will strike that location. Therefore, it is not that we are staying silent, we are not silent, but currently, our attacks are entirely calculated.
The United States is preparing what Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has described as the toughest sanctions in history against Iran, as Washington looks to intensify economic pressure on Tehran and push the country towards a settlement. Bessent said the new measures would be part of a wider campaign aimed at economically isolating Iran. He suggested that maximum economic pressure could help Washington avoid another large-scale military operation. His remarks came after President Donald Trump announced what he called the most crushing economic operation ever taken against any country. Trump warned that countries providing financial, commercial, or government support to Tehran could face tremendous economic consequences. The campaign is expected to target Iran's economic lifelines, including oil smuggling networks, financial transfers, exchange houses, ship registries, and friend companies. But Washington's next major challenge could be China. China remains Iran's biggest oil customer and buys more than 80% of Iran's seaborne oil exports. Any move by Washington to increase pressure on Chinese companies doing business with Iran could have major consequences for the global oil trade. Bessent also urged Beijing to support U.S. efforts to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, a crucial energy shipping route at the center of the confrontation. China, however, rejected Washington's approach. A spokesperson for the Chinese embassy in Washington said that sanctions and pressure would not help resolve the conflict, and called on all sides to pursue political and diplomatic solutions. The United States and Iran were locked in a rapidly escalating confrontation in early 2026, with tensions finally spilling into open war on February 28, when the US and Israel launched major airstrikes on Iran. The strikes targeted Iran's nuclear and ballistic missile infrastructure and aimed to weaken its military capabilities and leadership. Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei was killed in the opening strikes. Tehran quickly hit back with missile and drone attacks targeting Israel, US military positions and sites across the Middle East. Iran also moved to shut the strategically important Strait of Hormuz, taking the conflict far beyond the immediate US-Iran confrontation and putting a major global energy route at risk. For more than 3 months, the fighting continued, with waves of missile strikes, air attacks, and retaliatory operations. Gulf states were increasingly caught in the middle, as Iranian attacks and the wider regional conflict threatened US bases, energy infrastructure, and maritime traffic. By June, however, Washington and Tehran began looking for a way out. After negotiations involving regional mediators, the two sides reached an interim framework aimed at stopping the fighting and creating room for talks on Iran's nuclear program, sanctions, and wider regional security. In June, the US and Iran signed the Islamabad Memorandum of Understanding. The deal called for an immediate halt to military operations and barred both sides from launching further attacks against each other. It also provided for a 60-day ceasefire, the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, and steps to ease economic pressure on Iran, including measures related to oil exports and the US blockade of Iranian ports. The ceasefire sharply reduced direct US-Iran attacks and was meant to serve as a bridge toward a lasting peace agreement. But the underlying disputes over Iran's nuclear and missile programs, sanctions, and regional security remained unresolved. And the truce soon began to show cracks. Washington and Tehran continued to disagree over the memorandum, particularly on the Strait of Hormuz, sanctions, and the US naval blockade. By August, the 60-day diplomatic window had effectively broken down. The US said it would not extend the ceasefire, while Iran accused Washington of failing to honor its commitments. Tehran has since warned that it could adopt a more offensive military posture if diplomacy fails.